Initial D, everything you need to know. Cars, tuners, drifting, a culture that continues to steal the hearts of young people and risk-taking people. One of the most influential things that added to the culture of drifting was a Japanese series called Initial D. Many people around the world loved it, and if you were a fan, then you'd know how influential the series was. In this video, we are going to tell you everything you need to know about Initial D. Background: Initial D is a comic series which was published in the Young magazine for 18 years since 1995. It's based in Japan and introduced car drifting to many parts of the world, including the US. The comic is about street racing. Because the focus of the series was illegal street racing in Japan, most of the comic's focus was somewhere in the mountains away from the city, or where there were crowds. Various anime production companies got interested in Initial D, and as you may guess, they strike deals to have it animated for television. These companies included Studio Gallop and OB Studio. The series was so successful, it had to be translated to English for the North American audience. It soon became one of the most loved animation series both in Japan and North America. But before we get into any more technicalities, what was the story about? Story summary: Initial D is a story about a boy, Takumi Fujiwara, who was a delivery boy for his father's tofu shop. His father is Bunta Fujiwara. Takumi was an ordinary high school boy who was also working as a gas station attendant. At this point, we are talking about a boy who hated driving since it was not something he learned to do out of love, but was forced by his situation. Having to drive around with his father's 1983 Toyota AE86 car to deliver orders. However, the amount of driving he did harnessed his driving skills, which were discovered by his friends. They introduced him to togue racing. This gives Takumi a new perspective of driving, as he eventually falls in love with street racing. The whole series is basically about him working to become the best driver in Gunma. Having formed his team, Takumi is challenged by a group named Red Suns to compete on Mount Akina. This leads to a series of races, both practiced and the official race, in which Takumi wins despite the fact that the opposition was driving a better car, the Mazda RX-7. It turns out that the leader of the Red Suns is his father. This is where the rest of the series is focused. Many more challenges come to challenge and attempt to defeat Takumi. This takes place and soon finds himself racing while facing graduation. He later joins a racing team called Project D, which is a racing group formed by Ryosuke Takahashi, who is a former leader of the Red Suns, which increases the difficulty of his opponents as he now has to face really good drivers. The story gets interesting when Takumi gets his set of imposters who try to disturb Project D, but they are soon revealed in public view as imposters. Project D continues to win more races against Team 246, Team Sidewinders, Starleaf, and more. This all happens as Takumi continues making deliveries for his father. At some point we wanted to get rid of his car, which almost made him lose a race. It's based on reality. For a long time, there have been questions on whether the Initial is based on a true story and real character. This ensured a search for the real Takumi Fujiwara, as dedicated fans rolled through pages trying to find out who Takumi is. It turns out that though the names of the characters are not real, the characters are based on real people. Takumi is a real person, but who it is a question that had to be cracked. He is Keiichi Tsuchiya, a professional racer from Japan whose life is based on the series. He has received a number of cups and may be well regarded as one of the greatest racers in Japan. Guess what car he drives? A Toyota AE86 Sprinter Truno. Coincidence? It turns out he was the advisor for the anime series. The plots of the anime series are also based on places that actually exist, clearly showing that the series has some truth and reality embedded to it. Here are some fun facts about the series. Fact 1. Did you know that Initial D was at first aimed at poking fun at Toyota Truno, the Japanese Navy and Air Force? But soon the series became a world success. Fact 2. Another great fact about Initial D is that it introduced a lot of people who were not so familiar about cars and car racing into the car world. There have been many people from many backgrounds across the years who have come out to say they previously hated cars or did not have any interest until watching Initial D. It clearly converted a vast majority of its fans into car lovers. This means that the series itself may have played a huge role in the car industry as well, where certain models of cars were bought due to Initial D's influence. More so, due to many fans gathering in online spaces, it has also created a space for people to learn and share information on cars and car parts, helping the most basic car lover. Fact 3. The Toyota AE86 Sprinter Truno was the main car in the series as it was created, and it was driven by the character in real life. But for some strange reason, when the series was brought into the American market, the car was changed into the Toyota Corolla GTS. Well, the truth is, it was basically the same car, it's just a preference in name calling. But if you were to bump into an American die-hard fan of Initial D, they would most probably stick to calling it the Toyota AE86 Sprinter. Some may even use the word Hachiroku, which means 86. There's just something about calling cars in the way their creators intended for them to be called. Fact 4. The one-hat steer is also what stands out in the comics. This, however, was intentional on their part. There is a famous racer that the producers of the series were trying to imitate, Peter Solberg. There are many other Formula 1 racers who always display this cool one-hand steering technique. Whether it's good or bad is something we simply have to live and decide on. Fact 5. Watching the series, you'll bump into Akina Speedstars and Silver Starleaf. What you might not have known, though, is that these two teams are named after actual brands of wheel with the same names. In fact, Speedstar Racing collapsed in 2004 and was later saved by Tanabe. Fact 6. The main character in Initial D was developed to be an 18-year-old, and the reason for this was because the creators need the character to be as young as possible, but the laws in Japan only permit 18 years old and older to hold a driver's license. This means that they had to settle on making Takumi Fujiwara an 18-year-old boy in senior high school. However, judging from the series, it's based on illegal street racing, so trying to be within the law in describing the character doesn't fix anything. I guess it's simply to not overdo the whole illegal thing, but if you know, you know. It's clear that Takumi has been driving since before he was 18 years old, judging from the series' initial pilot. Fact 7. Many Japanese names have actual meanings, but have you ever wondered what the name Takumi means in Japanese? You have 5 seconds to guess the meaning in the comment section. And no, it does not mean street racer. Takumi means clever or someone who is skillful. Now that you know this, I certify you as Takumi. Fact 8. If you watch the cartoon version of Transformers, more particularly the Energon series, then you might have noticed the 8-6. It appears at a distance and, in fact, the episode doesn't reveal if the car could be transformed. Fact 9. The live-action movie version of the anime was released in 2005. However, the movie version has been in plans for so long that so much has changed due to differences in directors and producers. Even some of the original cast changed. Hong Kong household names include Jackie Chan. Fact 10. If you paid close attention to the Initial D series, you might have noticed that they used New Balance shoes together with its clothes. They may have struck a deal for this. As the series went on, the character changed clothes more often than in the beginning stages of the series. There are many facts about the Initial D series, but more importantly, and something we have been ignoring, is that since the series was based on actual people and places that exist in Japan, the amount of influence the series had on fans may have concerned the government since the whole series is about illegal street racing. Mount Akina had to add speed bumps on most roads in hope that the series does not evolve into real life among fans. People can be wild, you know. The extreme nature in which the place is now designed to prevent drifting is so bad that there are now plastic poles which are placed in between lanes. Fictions about Initial D. Although Initial D has a lot of reference to the real world, it is still a fiction story, which carries with it fiction parts as well. Mount Akina is heavily different from the real one. The terrible pavements are much worse in real life compared to the cartoon series, from the rusting corners and the roads which are more tighter and shorter. As previously mentioned, there have been poles placed in the middle of the roads to prevent drifting, so the anime series does not show the real condition of the roads. In Japan, if you get emotionally fulfilled by driving cars, you are given the term lonely driver, but this is derived from Initial D. The guys who are obsessed with driving often don't have romantic relationships, hence the term. The series, however, uses it to emphasize the love for cars. Now I really hope you enjoyed watching this video and got all the knowledge you needed about Initial D. Let us know in the comments if you are an Initial fan and which fact stood out for you. Remember to like and subscribe to our channel for more videos like this.